Good afternoon, everyone who have joined us for this second session on the lecture series Gandhiji as Designer, hosted by Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute and Symbiosis Institute of Design, Symbiosis International University, Pune. It's under SICI Golden Jubilee Lecture Series Grant 2021. The concept of the lecture series is Gandhiji as Designer, Gandhiji's approach and impact on visual art, design and visual culture of India. This is second lecture of the series, and we have with us Abhijeet Randive. Abhijeet is a editor and translator, and he is a creative head of Pune International Film Festival, Pune. And Abhijeet is talking today about Gandhiji in popular visual culture of India, Indian design, art and films. That is what his topic is. I'm Dr. Nitin Hadap, HOD Fashion Designing. I'm delighted that Abhijeet Randive is guest speaker for this lecture series, lecture number 2. SID has taken initiative for this lecture series to know more about Gandhian philosophy and visual culture. Basically for young student and our professors also, and even there are many people in society who are curious about this. After lecture number 1, we have got good feedback from various students as well as faculty members about the theme and their understanding of that. Even we have conducted one practical session for our student to pursue it and convert the last lecture's core theme about Gandhiji as Designer into children book, and students have done a good assignment on it, Prachiji. Now, may I request Dr. Sanjeevani Ayachi, Dean, Architecture and Design Faculty, Symbiosis International University, Pune, to give her opening remarks. Over to you, Sanjeevani.
Yes. So good evening, everyone. Good evening, Abhijeet. It's a pleasure to have you here. And welcome, Dr. Prachi, as well. So this is the second and the last in the series of lectures that we are jointly hosting with the Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute. And it's really interesting to see how Gandhiji continues to, dominate visual culture across our country as well as elsewhere in the world. So normally, we are used to seeing his profile on our currency notes, on our coins, on the names of streets, in in various posters of political initiatives and all of that. So it's great that he continues to impact us, and I look forward to hearing from Abhijeet how he has perceived this change and this impact of Gandhiji on visual culture across all the various aspects of visual culture as observed by him. So I welcome all of you. I welcome all participants to the lecture, and I hope we have a very enriching experience today.
Thank you.
Nitin, your mic is off. You will need to switch it on.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Sanjeevani, for opening remark. Now may I request Dr. Prachi Kaur, Director, Indo-Shastri Canadian Institute, New Delhi, to address the gathering. Over to Prachi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nitinji, for this opportunity again to interact with you with all of you. It's my pleasure to be part of this second lecture in the series that is based on Gandhiji, who's, I would say, very close to us as well. We consider Babuji and Bapuji. I don't know everyone associate with those two names or not. Bapuji is, of course, our father of nation, Gandhiji, and Babuji is, for us, is Shastriji, on whose name, we have been founded. So carrying forward the great work and the contribution that they have made to not just to India, but to whole world in terms of their approach, their knowledge, their wisdom, and their perspectives in life. I would say that it's a great moment for us that our member institution has come up with this wonderful idea we have supported a couple of work on Gandhiji, but this is new in the domain of knowledge. And I'm very pleased that the new perspectives have been built up to bring Gandhiji, appear as a person who, as a personality, who's not just sticking to the currency notes and on whose name we have been taught the ways of life, but also in a popular culture and, as you said, media, visual arts, and anything and everything that has to deal with our life can have presence of Gandhiji's ideology and vision. So I congratulate once again all of you for putting this together. I'm sure Abhijeet ji is going to share some perspective that are going to help our younger researchers and of course to the teaching learning faculty to take it forward and bring out something beautiful out of those perspective that Abhijeet ji is going to share, because sharing of ideas, sharing of knowledge is a way to take it forward as well. So I would not take much of time. I can only say that we are proud that you are our member and conducting such kind of events. We have been in to celebrate 150 years of Gandhiji, not just when we started 150 years of Gandhiji, but before as well. We have been doing a number of activities and programs that were lying, on the ideology that Gandhiji has ascertained for everyone to follow. But this is new, as I said, and I have been in some time back. I remember my conversation with NID, and we have discussed this aspect in great detail. Unfortunately, nothing happened after, because this I'm talking about the time before the pandemic, and we had great plans because NIT also has contributed immensely in this area. Of course, I think everyone is doing their bit, but they have also done some good work, and I thought that we would be able to bring out an exhibition or something like that to come up with a new Gandhiji, new image of Gandhiji. And that couldn't happen, but I'm really happy that this is an initiative and Shastri has supported it. We look forward to carry this forward. So a lot of responsibility lies on you, Nitinji and Sanjeevni, for taking it forward and making something beautiful out of it, out of this initiative. Believe you me that you will have all my support in extending this idea to a different level. Not just in India, but in Canada as well. So let's do something together. We have energetic minds and people who are engaged in these kind of deliberations. So I look forward to future collaborations with our member institution in this regard, and all the very best, all of you, for the lecture ahead with us. And take care of yourself, and all the very best once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Prachiji. Thank you for this encouragement and your promise to forward this idea and continue with this idea at different level. Sure, I assure you in behalf of SID SIU that we will definitely work on this with you. Yeah. Before I invite Abhijeet Randive to address all of our student, faculty member and guest, I'd like to introduce him to all of you. Abhijeet has studied in his graduation from St. Xavier College, Mumbai. He's completed his MTech in Computer Science and Engineering from IIT Powai, Mumbai, and Advanced Diploma in Modern French Language, Alliance Francaise, Pune, 1999. He's a translator, and he has translated some wonderful works, out of which I'd like to share one. That is what evaluation of the Marathi novel Kusla by Jnanapith laureate, written by Bhalchandra Nemade, writer Bhalchandra Nemade, published by Harper and Collins as a part of anthology on Indian novel, 50 writers, 50 books, and more than 7 translations on different levels from French to Marathi. That is what Abhijeet's contribution is. Apart from translation and literature, he has written articles, newspaper, periodicals on world literature, world cinema. So his experience is vast in visual language, art, painting, and films also. His teaching visual arts, cinema, film studies, film appreciation in Film Institute of India, Jesse School of Art, Mumbai, National Film Archive of India, Savitribai Phule University, Pune, Federation of Film Societies of India, and Department of French, Department of English, MS University, Baroda. Published a series of articles on French cinema in periodical Rupavani, published by Prabhat Film Society, Mumbai, and interesting article series on human figure in Western art in Siki Akshara, IC Akshara, an online publication. He has his blog. Those who are interested, please visit his blog, and you will come to know more about him, as well as his literature is available on academia. Last but not the least, Abhijeet is a creative head, Pune International Film Festival. With this introduction, may I now request Abhijeet to address all of us. Thank you, Abhijeet, for being us and accepted our invitation for this topic. Over to you, Abhijeet.
Thank you everyone for inviting me and for that great introduction, Nitin. I'm going to start sharing my presentation. So let's see if we can manage that. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, it's visible. Go on, Abhijeet.
Thanks. At the outset, I have to say that the topic itself is fairly vast, principally because Gandhiji has been extremely popular, and also because while he was alive and even afterwards, he's been represented in various media in various forms to a very large extent. And so to give justice to all that in a 1 hour session is kind of what I would say impossible. So I'm going to try the impossible. So please bear with me. So to pare down a few things, I mean, I've taken popular visual culture as in something that is, different from what we call high art, and which gets displayed in museums and which gets sold in auctions, and the artist is talked about as somebody like a genius, and so on. So something different from that is what you would call popular visual culture, and which is culture for the masses, which is visible to the masses, or which they don't have to really go anywhere to see it. It's just around them, and it's been around. So in this respect, if you look at the time when Gandhiji emerged on the national political scene as a leader of the freedom movement, you would realize that at that time, the most dominant pieces of popular culture were things like calendar art and posters and ads and things like that. So at least in the initial part, I have concentrated on that. So to start with, here is an image from the 1920s, and it's a poster of Bharat Mata with a charkha. So you can see here, and a tricolor. So you can see here that this was roughly time when Gandhiji emerged, and this whole charkha became a symbol of the freedom movement, also for self-reliance and things like that. And so here a poster with the Bharat Mata holding the charkha and presumably spinning, it retains its significance in the sense that it told people, what the freedom struggle was and what India was and what we stand for. The next poster is from the 1930s, and here you will see how political events of significance also were represented in popular art. And this one is called Bharat Ki Bhagya Ka Niptara, or The Fate of India Sealed Up. And it refers to the Lord Irwin talks and the agreement that followed. And you'll see again a scale in which on the one side you have Gandhiji, on one side you have Lord Irwin, and then the Indian population behind, and the sun of the freedom is rising. That is the roughly the connotation here. This is again an image from the 1930s, and it refers to the time when Gandhiji visited London for the, presumably for the Roundtable Conference, and he had visited the Buckingham Palace. And this is a poster about Gandhiji's meeting with the king. And you can see how the visual contrast is achieved by the fineries of the palace and the clothes that the king is wearing, and then this simple white clad Mahatma wearing chappals in front of him, meeting the king like that. And we realize that through posters like these or through popular art like this, um, it was in a way showing the Indian population what Gandhiji stood for, what his philosophy stood for, and how it remained in contrast with what the British stood for and what they were doing to the country. Here's another poster from the 1940s this time, and it's a photo montage in which what you see is the figure of Gandhi, and inside that figure, you will see figures of various political leaders, including Gandhi, of course, but also Tilak, for example, Nehru and Bose and Lala Lajpat Rai and so on. So the significance or the idea here is that everything or everybody who wants or who has fought or who's fighting for India's freedom, uh, the whole thing kind of culminates into this one person, Gandhiji, and the whole nation kind of. Gandhiji stands for the whole nation and the freedom struggle and symbolizes that. Here's another image from the 1940s. Just for the contrast, I have, because it uses a significant image from the mythology. So the figure on the left is from the Raja Ravivarma press. Um, it's the story of Shiva and Markandeya. So the story is from the mythology, and Markandeya is being carried by Yama, the king of the god of death, and so he's being killed essentially, and Shiva comes and saves him. So you will see the same kind of figurative composition on the poster on the right. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a colored reproduction of that. Sorry about that, but the original was in color. And here you see Gandhiji in place of Shiva in the same kind of gesture. And then you have Bharat Mata in the place of Markandeya, and of course the British in the place of Yama. So you realize that slowly Indians, people say that Indians are always enamored by mythology, and to get your point across about a lot of things, if you can use mythology, it becomes easier. And this happened during plays, for example, that used to talk about mythological themes, um, and they used to refer to the freedom struggle, like Kichak Vad, the story, and so on. And even when cinema started, you'll realize that a lot of early cinema used stories from the mythology. So here you see something similar happening for carrying the message of Gandhi and his place in the nation. Here's another poster from the 1940s in which you see Bharat Mata and the tricolor, and Gandhiji as a child sitting on her lap. So it's like saying that he's the son of Bharat Mata, and he's the true son because he's the only one who can save Bharat Mata from the British. Then this one is a poster from 1942, of course, about the Quit India movement. And again, you will see how the color scheme itself is interesting. You have the colors of the tricolor. You have the saffron on the top, you have green on the bottom, and then the letter Q as a frame in which you see Gandhiji in the center, and with Nehru and Bose holding the tricolor, and of course the map of India in the background. So you will realize that whether it was political propaganda or in general the kind of posters that people would like to buy and keep at home and display on their walls and things like that, Gandhiji became a very significant figure in all of these in terms of the visual imagery and what it represented. This one is from 1944 and it's by the artist Chitta Prasad, whom some of you might know if you've studied the history of Indian art. He was very famous as a mainly as a political cartoonist. He's made many cartoons about the situation in India at that time. And in this one, he shows Gandhiji at prayer, and again you will find the tricolor significance here. So you will see the saffron and the green in terms of flowers and leaves here. And this was taken this was when Chitta Prasad had visited Gandhiji in Pune in 1944, where he was held in jail by the British following the Quit India movement. The next one is again from the 1940s, and it's called the March to Independence. And again, I don't know how many of these details are visible here, but there are many figures here. But essentially, it's a chariot that is marching towards freedom, and you see Bose at the front carrying a sword, and then Gandhiji at the helm, who's driving the chariot essentially, and Nehru is carrying the flag with Bharat Mata sitting, and of course all the deceased leaders in heaven, uh, and they are showering the chariot with flowers. And of course, they are marching towards the Swaraj Mandir, which is the Temple of Independence. And the temple itself, you will find a parliament-like figure there with the tricolor on top. So these were these kinds of things were very much in the how do you call it, in the public's mind, simply because they used to be everywhere, that kind of art. And I mean, of course, that kind of art carried all kinds of themes there, sometimes religious, sometimes mythological, and sometimes, of course, about the freedom struggle. And then, of course, we come to 1948 when Gandhiji was assassinated. And this is a poster that shows that was created after that. And it says Bapuji, an eternal sleep. And it is modeled, if you've studied the Western art history, you will realize that it is modeled after the concept of the Pieta, in which Christ, after his crucifixion, his bloodied body is held by his mother. And this is a pose very similar to that, where again you see Bharat Mata with the tricolor, and she's holding Gandhi's body, and you will see blood coming out from where the bullet wounds are. I mean, of course, you can imagine with the kind of popularity and the kind of significance that Gandhiji had in the nation. So it was 1948, and his assassination was like a shock. And that shock was obviously represented in popular art in various ways. So this is another poster that should come out in 1948, and you will see Gandhiji's life story. The poster is called Evolution of Gandhiji. And again, there is a lot of mythological significance here, because traditionally these kinds of imagery was created for somebody like Vishnu, with his 10 avatars. So you will show the 10 avatars in the poster surrounding Vishnu's image like this. And here again, at the bottom left, if you see, it is Gandhiji after birth, and he's shown inside a lotus flower. So this again, the mythology, I think, about Brahma's birth is that he was found in a lotus flower. So here they've shown Gandhiji like that. And then you see Gandhiji in Western dress as a young student. And then after he came back from South Africa, he started wearing Indian dress. So you see him there at the top left. And then at the top, you have the Dandi March. And at the top right, you have Gandhiji in jail spinning. Khadi, and then the Quit India. And then again, at the bottom left, you have the independence with Gandhiji and the tricolor, India's national flag behind him. And then you have the Amar Jyoti and his body lying in state on a bed of flowers. And then, of course, Gandhiji's figure in the middle uh, and with India's map below. This is a similar image with a few significant changes. So instead of the lotus flower, now this becomes Gandhiji in his cradle, and the cradle is in tricolor. So you will see the saffron white and green there. And then again, similar imagery here. Um, and then you see just on the left to his chappals, you see the gun that killed Gandhi. And of course, in both the images, you see blood coming from his wounds. So it is obvious that it is referring to Gandhiji as being killed. And it's a sort of a mourning in remembrance. And this one is called Bapuji Ki Amar Kahani. This is again from 1948, and it's almost as if Gandhiji, Jesus, and Buddha are blessing India from above, from the heavens. And then you also see Bose and Vivekanand, and then again Patel and Nehru. So you realize that in a way. To the nation in shock, creation of these images was a kind of an outlet of showing solidarity with him and mourning his loss and remembrance for him. By the way, if I'm going too fast and if you would like to see some of the images, ask me to pause and I'll pause. This is another image, and it is Bapuji's ascent to heaven, as you can see. So the idea is that gods have sent a plane, or whatever you call it, a mythological sort of a flight for carrying him to heaven. And you will see again from the heavens gods and political leaders as well as religious saints, like the image of Buddha and Guru Nanak and Jesus and Shiva and other gods. And you'll also see freedom fighters on the left, and then the Indian population as well as angels. So it's a confluence of Western and Indian mythological iconography, you can say. And then we come to the 1950s, in which slowly the nation has come to terms with Bapuji's loss. And of course, we keep remembering him as usual. Uh, and at the same time, it is a significant leap where the nation has become independent. We have become a republic. And so here in this poster, you see the parliament at the bottom with the tricolor, and then Nehru, the prime minister. Um, and then a map of India with Gandhi at its head, as if, still India is represented, or Gandhi is India for us. And then with a halo around his head, as if to signify his saintlyhood or his godliness. And I also wanted to show you that, the Gandhi topi as such, which Nehru is wearing here, it also became a symbol for Gandhi's movement and the freedom movement. And as you know, that from the 1920s onwards, all the freedom fighters, to show solidarity with the freedom movement, used to wear this Gandhi cap, Gandhi topi. And even today, you will see a lot of political leaders wearing this kind of a cap, and even non-political leaders or normal people, many times from the villages or from certain state of the society, they use this Gandhi topi. And this is an image that sort of shows you the slowly the nation is on its way to becoming a modern nation. And so it's significant in terms of, you see Gandhiji on top, and then what you see on the top right, I don't know how much of that is visible because the original image is not extremely good. But what you see here is a farmer and his bulls. So it's like he's tilling the lands using the bulls, which used to be the traditional method. And then at the bottom, what you see, or at the center of the image, what you see is the modern farmer with his tractor and tilling the land. So in a way, it is, as a modern nation, we are embracing technology, and the nation is changing while we still remember Gandhi and his old ways. In a way, it's significance. It's signifying something like that. And so at this point, I would like to mention a film called Naya Daur. And of course, needless to say, Hindi cinema, or cinema in general, remains one of the most popular means of uh, art for the masses, you can say. And there were many movies in which there are songs about Bapuji, and Bapuji is a significant figure or is talked about, and so on. However, I would like to make a special mention of Naya Daur, simply because it's a film in which uh, Gandhiji's vision is kind of realized in cinema. I don't know how many of you have seen the film, so I'll just take a few minutes to explain what the story is. It shows a village, and it is according to Gandhiji's vision of an idealized village in which everyone lives in harmony, people are laboring happily, and people are living happily with each other, everyone is friendly, and so on. And then the conflict comes from outside. So the village as a unit is the story is about how the village as a unit fights with this conflict and fights using non-violent means. So the conflict comes from a person uh, who comes from the city, and he installs a sawmill, for example, in the village. And so earlier people used to um, fell trees and create wooden logs by their hands and using tools, etc. But then the sawmill essentially means that these people, these laborers, are jobless now, because they are not needed, because the machinery is there to work more efficiently, and of course without any regards of the livelihood of the workers. And then the second and the major conflict comes from a bus that is introduced in the village. And the bus is used for carrying people from the nearest railway station to the villages. And of course the bus is cheaper, the bus is faster, and that endangers the livelihood of um, people who are driving horse carts. And so Dilip Kumar is the hero, and he's the driver of one such horse cart. And he rises in rebellion against the use of this bus and the loss of his livelihood and his fellow laborers. And so he creates a movement in which he challenges the owner of the bus to a race. And of course, I mean, the obvious thing is that the bus is faster. So if the race is fought on a normal road together, then it is obvious that the bus is going to win. But what the village does is, the village comes together and it builds a separate road, which is a shortcut, but which is a kind of a rough and narrow road that goes through the woods and so on which you can only draw a horse cart or something smaller like that, like a bullock cart and so on. And so he uses that route to win the race, essentially, and to drive the significance of Gandhiji's vision of a village. And the name of Gandhiji is not really used in the film as such, but the film starts with a quote from Gandhiji. And the quote talks about how humans and machines are kind of juxtaposed against each other, and it is not really conflict, and the machines are meant for human beings, and they are not supposed to get rid of human beings or treat them inhumanely and so on. So this is calendar art from the 70s, and you can see again that people used this as a sort of something as a wall hanging like a calendar, and with these images and so on. But at the same time, we have to realize that slowly a sort of an what do you call it, a discomfort was seeping in about the kind of turns that politics was taking. Students were agitating, the Naxalbari movement was starting at around the same time. And of course, politicians were corrupt, and a lot of problems were being noticed because of that. And of course, a lot of popular art took notice of that. Even in cinema, we have seen, just like Naya Daur, in 1976, the film by Shyam Benegal came, Manthan, and it essentially told the story of the Amul Milk Federation, and which, as you might know, essentially was, Varghese Kurian's vision was a Gandhian vision in which villagers and milk producers come together, they form a cooperative society, and once everybody's milk is combined together, they kind of become a market force, and they also give a fair price to the milk producers and so on. And so that story itself was extremely important in the way of showing how Gandhiji's vision can be realized, and creating a film out of that meant that that story was actually told to the masses, and the film became fairly popular. It's a significant moment in the parallel cinema also, simply because the film was actually released and a lot of people saw it, and it made a lot of money as well. And at the same time, mention must be made of conflicting visions or
Is there some problem?
problem in what sense?
Uh, no, I
Yeah,
thought
I
there
think
was a lag. So,
lag.
but there was
Now it's okay.
some, yeah, I think there
Oh,
was some
okay.
internet connectivity issue.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
go on, Abhijit.
So at around the same time, people like Satyajit Ray were creating films. For example, his urban trilogy, uh, uh, and especially a film like Jana Aranya, for example, in which the father is a Gandhian and the son has to live in today's world, in the contemporary world, which is corrupt, and in which nothing can happen without you becoming corrupt or you becoming part of the corruption. And it is the son's slow realization that the world that his father believed in no longer exists, and therefore in a way it's a stark realization that what Gandhiji wanted for the nation and what we have as contemporary reality are very different from each other. And then, of course, in 1982, Richard Attenborough's Gandhi came, and again, it became a fairly popular film in India and abroad as well. And people flocked to see it, and that kind of a phenomenon actually tells you that despite all the contemporary reality and despite everything that people were facing at that time, or the disillusionment with what was happening with the country, did not stand in the course of what people think in terms of what Gandhi was and how they idolized him. um, and this is also because in terms of design also, I find this poster which was created for the publicity of the film by an artist called Vikas Gaitonde, I find it significant because just a simple image of the Dandi march with Gandhi and the child, it signified everything that Gandhi stood for, and therefore it was used as publicity for the film. So this is in continuation with the disillusionment or what was happening in the political sphere. This is a cartoon by Abu Abraham. I couldn't date it exactly, but I think it is from the 70s. So here Gandhiji becomes the fabled elephant in the story of the elephant and the blind men. And then the blind men are the political leaders, because you see them, again, I don't know how much of that is visible, but they are political leaders dressed in a white kurta and dhoti and jacket and the Gandhi topi. And they are, as the fable goes, they are touching the elephant from different angles and thinking that Gandhi is something, and nobody seems to have really realized what Gandhi as a whole stands for and what he is and what his vision is. And then, of course, we come to the 1990s, where we opened our economy, and the earlier socialist vision it gave way to a liberalized economy and a globalized India, or India as a power player in the globalized economy. And you see in a cartoon by R.K. Laxman, Mahatma Gandhi Road, and you see Gandhiji on that road, and all around him are the symbols of capitalism or globalization which have entered India, like Pepsi and Coca-Cola. And of course, there's a bullock cart, and then the bullock cart is loaded with bottles of Coca-Cola, and with the bullock huffing and sitting down as if he's tired. And then, of course, you have McDonald's and Gucci shoes and Kellogg's and all that. In a way, you will realize that it is visionary in the sense that if you go to any city or any slightly larger second or third tier urban town, the kind of visual landscape that greets you on any major street, and usually Mahatma Gandhi Road is a major street if you go to any town, including Pune and including Mumbai and including many other towns. So this is the kind of scene that greets you, that you have these big hoardings with heavy lighting and so on, a lot of electricity being wasted, and of course a lot of pollution, noise pollution, visual pollution also, and environmental pollution as well. But it is, I guess, it is the price we pay for uh, becoming a part of the globalization process. And this is another cartoon by R.K. Lakshman. Again, I couldn't date this, but I guess this is either from the 70s or the 80s. And you see a politician again wearing a Gandhi cap, and he's peeping down at the frame to read the letters, because he doesn't recognize whose image that is, and somebody is explaining it to him that it is Gandhiji, sir. So that is where we have come in terms of we've come so far from the vision of Gandhi that it's almost as if Gandhiji is unrecognizable to the politicians of today, is what seems to be signified here. And again, we come to very, how you would call it, in a way, a sad kind of stories that started flowing around at around the same time in the 80s and the 90s. For example, there were controversies regarding some of Hussein's paintings, in which the Bharat Mata was shown, and in one of which I think Bharat Mata is shown along with Gandhiji, and people were offended by it, and there were court cases, and I'm sure you know all the history, or all you have to do is to Google for Hussein, and you will realize all the legal controversies. And so to signify that, I've used here a poem in Marathi that was published first in 1983. It's a poem by Vasant Gurjar, and it's called Gandhi Mala Bhetla, which means I met Gandhi. And the poem was first published in this form, in which you have the image of Gandhi, uh, and on both the sides and in the middle you have the text of the poem. And the poem is again a similar critique to what R.K. Laxman or other people have done, in the sense that the poet says, I met Gandhi in various circumstances, and in each of them he goes on to show how India has really changed and changed for the worse, and how Gandhi is in a way mortified or angry or disgusted at what has happened to the country. And the tragedy struck in somewhere in the 1990s, I think 1994, when the poem was republished in a house magazine of a nationalized bank. And so when that happened, it reached a lot of people because it was nationalized bank, and people were offended by it, and there was a court case, and the court case significantly is still alive, as in the court has reserved its verdict, and so it is not yet clear what is going to happen. And the court case was about obscenity, so they said that Gandhiji was insulted, and the poem was obscene and so on. And the significant thing was that Gandhiji's own descendants, like his grandson, etc., clearly stated that they were not offended by the poem. And unfortunately, it's a demonstration of how Gandhiji became uh, involved in the kind of unnecessary political battles that became the norm in the 90s, in the late 80s, 90s, and the Sega sort of continues until today, when people continue to be offended and with all kinds of things. And it's almost as if, uh, I mean, the poem was in a way showing how far we've come from Gandhiji's vision. So it's not at all insulting to Gandhiji, but in a way it respects Gandhiji and says that, we have come far and we have failed him and so on. Then in 2001, the film Lagaan came. And again, just like Naya Daur, I say that it shows the Gandhiji's vision of a village as a sort of a seat of the Ram Rajya or the Gram Swarajya, in which in Naya Daur, the enemy was the villain who came from the city and who introduced modern technology, and so people lost jobs. Whereas here, the story actually takes place in pre-independence India. So it is, in a way, the villagers fight for independence, and it is the enemy is very much the British. And you will see again in this kind of a tableau that people from all castes, people from all communities, they come together and fight the British through non-violent means, which in this case is a game of cricket. So, in a way, you can say that despite what was happening to the country, and despite how people were becoming cynical about uh, Gandhiji's vision and what was happening inside the country, which was contrary to his vision, and as far as we can get, in a way, from Gandhiji's vision for India. So, despite the contemporary reality, the success of these kinds of films shows that um, people were still interested in these kinds of stories. And of course, we have to acknowledge that in each of these films, the story was told in an entertaining way. So, of course, it's a film with songs and comedy and everything that a Hindi entertaining film is supposed to be. And yet, the message that it carries is obvious. And again, as somebody mentioned in the beginning, Gandhiji continues to remain alive in government schemes, such as the MGNREGA scheme, which is in a way carrying forward his vision of creating self-sustainable villages. And so if there is an employment problem in the villages, then it is through schemes like this. Um, through which we guarantee employment to people. And of course, in times like the pandemic, it is these kinds of schemes that have immensely helped people when the rest of the economy had slowed down or stopped itself. And then of course there is Lage Raho Munna Bhai. So in a way, you see a significant number of films in which either Gandhiji was shown as a figure in history or as a figure like this one, where contemporary reality kind of meets Gandhiji. And it's again, of course, it's interesting in how it juxtaposes these two figures, because we also have to realize that when a person like Sanjay Dutt is used as a hero in a film like this, you have to also realize that he's of course a very popular figure in Hindi cinema, but he has also been very controversial because of all kinds of things. Like everyone knows that he used to be a drug addict at some point, and then he reformed himself. Then he was also involved, or there were problems when weapons were found in his home during the riots in Mumbai, and then there was a court case and so on. So his figure he remained a very divisive figure, despite his popularity. So it was a very interesting casting in that sense, that casting him as the gunda, the Tapori guy, and then who meets Gandhi, and by introducing terms like Gandhi Giri. That whole merging of the Tapori language with Gandhiji's vision, I think it was significant in terms of how in a way it uh, kind of popularized again Gandhiji's vision. However, at this point, I would also like to pose a question that I mean I don't have an answer to, but which we must remember that despite the success of all these films, can we really say that did they really change society? Because in a way the films were entertaining and people saw them, and they became a commercial success, they made a lot of money. So is it a way of popularizing Gandhi, or is it a way of just using Gandhi's image, or using his popularity, or in terms of the capitalist society, are we just using his brand, so to say, to make money and for our profit making goals? So that is a question that I think we need to ask. And in a way, it is not just Gandhiji that was used. You also have a film like Rang De Basanti, for example, in which Bhagat Singh was used in a similar fashion, in which people in contemporary India look at Bhagat Singh and study him, and in a way use his figure to kind of solve problems. Um, but despite all these, uh, did they really change the course of history? Is really the question that we need to ask here. And then again, here we come back to Amul, um, which we had considered in terms of the story of Manthan, the story behind Manthan. And this is Amul's, as you know, Amul keeps creating these hoardings for all kinds of contemporary issues, and we see them everywhere in cities and on main roads and so on. And people talk about them, and these are fairly popular among the masses. And so this was their poster for commemorating the 150 years of Gandhi's birth. And at the same time, I would pose the same question even for Amul, that uh, I mean, obviously, in the beginning, uh, Kurian's vision was very much Gandhian in the way how he created that kind of a federation of farmers who came together and who became a force. But if actually you realize what is happening in the market today, and if you talk to people, for example, you'll realize that Amul has also become a very corporate brand, in which, for example, it goes to all kinds of lengths to drive local brands of milk or other products out of the market, and it pushes Amul's product by doing all kinds of tactics, by following all kinds of things. And if you talk to merchants, you'll realize that they understand this, and for them, Amul is not a Gandhian brand as such, but it is just another brand in the marketplace. And here you see some of the iconography, and again, it is these kinds of very simple figures that get used all over the place. I mean, you'll find them everywhere, really. And just a few strokes of just a simple line drawing, or just a few strokes, and everyone who's seeing it understands what this means, and recognizes Gandhiji's figure. So in this sense, you will one can say that it is really, his figure is like an icon even today, which the masses recognize, and people understand what that means. The only question again that remains is that they understand the figure, they understand that this stands for Gandhi, but do they really think about what Gandhiji stands for? And this it's another how do you call it, recognition of what we call today's contemporary society, or what some social scientists call a stage of late capitalism, in which nothing is sacred, everything becomes a brand, and everything is used for milking money, or creating propaganda, or creating political mileage, and so on. So this is obviously referring to the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, in which the logo for the Abhiyan is the glasses, as you see here. And again, that's another icon from Gandhiji that is used and people recognize it. And here the cartoon seems to critique that by saying that Gandhiji left behind something inspiring, something enduring, but also something fashionable, and which looks great in a logo, and it is used for political propaganda. And again, the question worth posing is that so this cartoon is from 2020, and it's been a few years since the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and really how significant, or how much has it changed, and has India become really cleaner after the Abhiyan, is the question that we need to pose. And this is another example of how the Swachh Bharat logo gets used. So this is a product from Reckitt Benckiser, Reckitt Benckiser, which is a global conglomerate, and it is, I believe, it's a British company formed with a merger from with a Dutch company, and it is really a global powerhouse of hygiene products and many other products, including condoms and including all kinds of things. And so this is a toilet cleaner that they manufacture, and it's not a cheap product in any way. So I mean, I don't know what it signifies to say for this kind of a product to carry the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Are they saying that by cleaning your toilet with an expensive product like this, you are taking part in the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan? I have no idea. And this is again a cartoon from 2019, which criticizes the way Gandhiji keeps getting used politically. So every time there are elections, because 2019 was the election year, so every time there are elections, politicians remember Gandhiji. So therefore, it's a return ticket in 2019. So every time we have elections, we'll call you back. But until then, it is better if you just remain insignificant, or if you just remain in a corner, forgotten somewhere, and we will use you again when we need you. It's like saying that. And this again, it is using Gandhiji's salt march, which is again, as you say, salt itself became a symbol of the freedom movement and Gandhiji's non-violence, non-cooperation movement, and civil disobedience, and so on. Um, and so, which is being used here again in a cartoon from 2019, which is the election year. And as you know, in the era of social media where we are today, fake news has become a very significant problem, and we get all kinds of false knowledge purporting to be knowledge in the WhatsApp university, and people believe in all kinds of things, and that has a that becomes politically significant because people seem to base their decisions about whom to vote for on the kind of fake information that they're getting, and all kinds of things happening with that. So here you see two people carrying their mobiles or tablets or something like that, with the logos of Twitter and Facebook and WhatsApp. And then on the left, you have the sun, which carries the election symbol. So it's like saying that the elections are around the corner and you have to vote. And if you really want freedom, then you have to take everything with a fistful of salt, because don't believe everything that the politicians are telling you, or don't believe everything that comes on WhatsApp or social media and so on. So in a way, Gandhiji is saying that what I used salt for is something else, and what you need to use salt for is something else in contemporary reality. And then, of course, we have these memes. And I have to confess here that, if you go on the net and search for Gandhiji's memes, in the kind of times that we live in, you will get a lot of offensive material, which is obviously created by people who have absolutely no respect for Gandhiji. And but it exists, and we cannot deny its existence. And all kinds of things are being said by using Gandhiji's figure. And in fact, there are people who are, who give you a template with Gandhiji's figure, something like what you see on the left here, that you see Gandhiji's figure, and then the rest of the poster is empty with a black background, and you can copy paste anything that you want there, and you can carry it forward as if Gandhiji is saying something. So here he's saying, uh, is it for this that I gave you freedom? Or the second one says, I believe in nonviolence. And then you see the kind of the posters of a few films that are getting released on 2nd of October, and the kind of violent posters that you see them there. And there is a certain irony in that, of course. And then, of course, the third one, you see the message that for a lot of people, Gandhi Jayanti just means that it's a dry day. So if you want to consume alcohol, then you have to remember that it's a dry day, and then you have to stock up your stockpile of alcohol before that. So it is ironic, and uh, I don't know how you would interpret these kind of messages, but we do have to acknowledge their existence. And then, of course, the kind of, we started with the charkha, and so I thought towards the end I would also show you the kind of ways in which the same imagery of the charkha keeps getting used by politicians. So this was when the prime minister visited Sabarmati ashram in 2017, and these images were reproduced all over. And it was a time when lynchings were happening, because people were suspected of carrying cows for slaughter or carrying beef and so on, and people were lynched and people were killed. And the prime minister made a statement against those lynchings on the day he visited the ashram. And then, of course, we have these images where on the left, it is the Israeli head of state, Benjamin Netanyahu, who visited the ashram, and his image was created here. And if you follow the politics of Israel, you'll realize that Israel in general and Netanyahu's policies in particular have been criticized globally for essentially uh, putting a lot of injustice onto the Palestinians, and the Palestinian cause is it's almost as if, you know, he's out to defeat the Palestinian cause, and he's doing as much as he can to defeat them and not give them their just freedom and so on. So when a political figure like this visits the ashram and these kinds of images are created, the irony is not really lost on even the world media. And then on the right, of course, you have Donald Trump, who visited India in 2020, just before the pandemic. So the pandemic was already raging all over the world, and some countries had also even created lockdowns, and they had stopped international flights and so on. But still, Trump was refusing to believe in those kinds of stories. He kept negating, or he kept denying the existence of the pandemic as such, and the result is for the rest of the world to see, because the United States has been one of the worst hit countries by the pandemic, and this person is definitely responsible for so many deaths of the Americans, and he's also been responsible for inciting Americans for violence, and he, denied the results of the elections, as you might know. And then on the 6th of January this year, his supporters um, actually attacked the Capitol Hill, and you've probably seen the images of the chaos that followed and so on. So, when the kind of person like Trump, with the kind of politics that he has been um, promulgating, you can say, or propagating, you can say, so with these kinds of people using the symbol of the charkha, you keep realizing again and again. Um, on the one hand, of course, it shows you the significance of Gandhiji, simply because these people want to use that symbolism. So they recognize that this kind of symbolism is important, and they need to make use of the brand of Gandhi. And at the same time, the irony of the whole thing, or the cynicism, there is no other way in which you can view that whole business. So with this, I end the presentation. And again, as I said, I have tried to give you a glimpse of the kind of imagery that gets created and that has been created over the years. So we've kind of, come full circle, in which Gandhiji started dominating the Indian visual imagery and the popular culture with the kind of symbolisms that we saw in the charkha, in the Gandhi topi, and non-violence, and so on. And from there, from 1920s to the 2020s, he's come a long way. He still remains significant as a figure, and also as an icon in the visual popular imagery. And yet, the contemporary reality has changed a lot, and we have to acknowledge that, we have to see that, we have to analyze that, and it has to make us think about Gandhiji freshly again, because unless we do that, I don't think we will fully realize his vision, or we will understand him. So thank you for bearing with me, and if I have left out a lot of things, my apologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhijit. Thanks for being with us. You started in 1920s and 2020s. You have covered the great imagery of about the Bapuji. You have started with calendar art and you have covered films, popular films, and capitalism. The question you have raised, I think we don't have answer. You rightly said that even you don't have answer about. But I think being in touch with these kind of issues and thinking on it itself, I mean to say, we may come with some not answer but some solutions, something in this regard. I think you have put a wonderful example of research. How one can think about the 100 year of popular culture, as you mentioned at the beginning of your lecture, that you're going to talk more about the images available to masses, and that is what the popular culture is about. And entirely you have covered almost all aspect of this. At the beginning you told it can be a challenge, and I think you have taken this challenge, Abhijit.
Thank you.
And I think even you have covered some Marathi poetry from Vasant Gurjar and other. So that way the whole session was really wonderful. And thanks, Abhijit, for your efforts and sharing your views on different issues with us and our students. Thank you, Abhijit. So there is one question in chat box. May I request Prasanna Harbe, the head of the department, product designing department, to take the question and for vote of thanks. Over to you, Prasanna.
I think, sir, you're muted, so
Prasanna,
we
you
cannot
are
hear you.
not audible to us.
Is it now okay?
Yes, you're audible. Please go on. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Nitin. And Abhijit, it was a really nice rendering, I will say, about portraying Gandhiji's, appearance in the visual aspects and visual culture of India. It was really a visual treat, I will say, and we really enjoyed. There is one question in the chat box given by Lokesh Naik. He's asking, one of the photos in the 1940s had a picture of a Nazi officer with a swastika armband. Could you please
Yes.
explain that?
Yes, I know the image, I think, and I think so. It's an obvious reference to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose because he had an understanding. He had gone and he had met Hitler, and he had an understanding with him, and he was of the opinion, as some of you might know, that instead of fighting with the British in the Second World War, he was thinking that we should form an alliance with Hitler, and we should fight the British. On the side of on Hitler's side. So the in that poster, I think the Nazi reference was to that.
So I think Mr. Lokesh Naik, you have got the answer.
And by
Is
the
there
way,
any?
before
Yeah.
we take any other questions, I have to, in all my humility, I have to say that the research is not mine. So I have taken significant amounts of images from specifically two books, and I would really urge people to study those books, if not just for Gandhiji, but in terms of popular imagery, especially in pre-independence India. One book is by Sumati Ramaswamy, and it talks about Bharat Mata and her images. And I'll share with Nitin Hadap the name of the book. And the other book is by Christopher Penny, who's again a scholar who specializes in popular arts. So the research is not mine. I've just used their research, and they've done a tremendously significant work in terms of finding, going through archives and going through older material, because one of the problems with popular imagery is that the people who had created those posters or those calendars in that time, they did not think that it was historically significant. So nobody was really interested in archiving it for the future or documenting it. And then, of course, when people buy something like that, or when people, so you have a calendar on your walls, and the year is over, you take the calendar and you throw it away. It is as simple as that. Or if you have a poster which is made of paper and it has to be cheap, so it has to be mass produced from an original lithograph or things like that, the way, for example, the Raja Ravi Verma priest did, and many others followed after that. So it has to be cheap and produced on cheap paper and so on. So it doesn't last long. So if a person has it on a wall, then after some time it becomes tattered and you throw it away. So preserving that is very difficult. And so people and various archives all over the world have tried to preserve whatever they could, and then it is through scholars like these, of which I'm not one, I have to confess. So it is their work that we have to be thankful for.
Thank you for your clarification. Uh, Maybe we would like to take one last question. If someone has any question, you can either type in the chat box, or you can simply ask by unmuting your mic. One question we will take, and if not, then we will have concluding remarks.
Abhijeet,
Yes.
I have a question. Yeah.
Yes.
Even now, the idealism and everything is changed, and till people how to use Gandhiji in different aspect.
Yes.
I just want you to focus from visual perspective. So, what's the significance of that?
Yes, so in a way, I consider that as, Gandhiji has become a brand in the capitalist society. So the imagery and the iconification continues, and it continues to get used. So it's in a way similar to, say, for example, Mona Lisa. So you find the figure of Mona Lisa all over the place, and anywhere in ads and in posters. And if you go to the Louvre, for example, and if you see the room in which Mona Lisa is kept, it's always the most crowded room, simply because it is the most famous image from the Louvre. And at the same time, there are many images in the Louvre, and there are many artworks in the Louvre which are of equal significance. Even there are other artworks or paintings by Da Vinci itself, but people don't want to see that, and they just want to see the Mona Lisa. So it is something similar, that he is an icon, and a global icon, not just an Indian icon. And so the capitalist, how do you call it, drivers of capitalism kind of realize that, and therefore they use all these images to drive their message across, and not Gandhiji's message across.
Thank you, Abhijeet.
Thanks, Nitin, for your question. Okay, that brings me to the vote of thanks. First, I would like to thank Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, New Delhi, for joining hands with SID for such great lecture series. Then, of course, I thank Abhijeet Randive for delivering such a nice and beautiful rendering about Gandhiji's connection with visual culture in India. I will thank Dr. Sanjeevani Ayachit, Dean of Faculty of Architecture and Design, SIU, and Director of SID, for giving her formal address. I will thank Dr. Prachi Kaul, Director of Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, for her address. And Sachin Dhopate and his team, the IT backbone of this lecture series, and also the backbone of SIU, who helped us in keeping this lecture series. All coordinators for registration support, Anandita and her team for handling the media. And lastly, you all participants who came and who participated, and also the people who have been watching this series on YouTube, which is a wonderful thing to have. There are more such events planned in this series, but not in the immediate future. But then keep an eye on our website, as well as we also would like to contact you through the emails and through the social media. So keep a watch on SID's website. And with that, we finish this second lecture. And I declare that today's session is over. Thank you for being with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abhijeet. Thanks all. Bye.